to kind of decide really if I needed to go to college or wanted to go to college. But I would say as I matured, like going through, junior, senior year, I started to enjoy, because the education is really good at Calvin. So I enjoyed, some classes, especially like, what do you call it? Not religion. It's like philosophy, and I really enjoyed some of those core classes. Because even the program that I went through, that I majored in, wasn't a super. I wouldn't say Calvin has a very great program in media production, but I'm not sure about now, but back then. So that's a little bit about my experience, and I will pick Megan.
For me, my experience was pretty smooth sailing, I would say. I actually started out as a graphic design major, but I took one drawing class and I was like, I cannot draw to save my life. So I switched to computer science. I would say the most challenging part of it was probably the education. I don't know if it's because I'm like just not smart, but a lot of the times it was very hard for me to follow my CS professors and what they were teaching. So a lot of the time, me and my friends, we spent a lot of time in the labs trying to figure out how to do our projects before the deadline and trying to like cram all of the stuff we were supposed to be studying for our exams. But yeah, somehow I graduated, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I think I mostly enjoyed my experience here because of the people. Like I said before, I met a lot of friends that I still keep in touch with to this day. I think my friendships with them also helped to like make me the person I am today as well. So I have a lot of fond memories of my time at Calvin, and people here are really like, I don't know, like they're all very solid people. So yeah, my experience, I would say, was mostly good because of the people I was with. How about Laura?
Yeah, I feel like I had quite a few ups and downs throughout college, as I'm sure everyone does. Similar to Jeremy, my freshman year was pretty challenging. I think because of maybe struggling or wrestling more with like my identity in terms of, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm adopted. All of my family is Dutch. I went to Forest Hills Public Schools where I was one of like 4 Asian kids in my grade. And that was very much what I was used to, and did not have much exposure to specifically like Korean American or Korean heritage or culture or anything like that. So then going to Kelvin, immediately, like the friends I made first semester were like all Gurkis grads and like Holland Christian, and I don't know, just kind of fitting in with my comfort zone. In terms of like, yeah. But and then I met a girl who lived on my floor, who was Asian American, and she happened to come down because she knew that I had a ukulele or something and wanted to borrow it, and then found out that I had a car and I could drive her to Meyer to go get groceries. And so we became friends over grocery runs, and she introduced me to her friends, who were predominantly Asian Americans. And then I struggled a lot with feeling like I was the whitewashed one amongst my Asian friends and the Asian one amongst my white friends, and kind of finding that balance of like, who am I really? Where do I fit in? And like balancing like social lives. And so yeah, that was definitely a struggle of mine that I was fortunate to have really great friends that kind of bared with me while I was going through an identity crisis like that. Um, and then similarly to what Megan was sharing, academics were definitely a challenge as well. I think in my experience, I was used to being not super challenged academically um, in my like childhood and high school, and found that grades and things like that just came very easily to me. So I didn't really have to learn how to study or try in school. So then when I went to college and was like taking real college classes um, and had to realize that I was not the smartest person in my classes anymore, and learn how to study and also learn how to just cram and fit all of your examples onto your cheat sheets that they give you in engineering. Yeah, so that was also definitely a challenge through college. But I also made lifelong friends that I still keep in touch with, like the truest, like genuine, authentic community I think I have experienced thus far. And it's definitely made me really value that and like crave that kind of connection, that kind of relationships moving forward. I often joke with my friends that college spoiled me in having all of your best friends, you know, to live with and do life with together. So yeah, it was definitely a highlight of my experience at Kelvin. I'll pass it to Joe Bay.
Yeah, for me, I would say the beginning was pretty smooth sailing. I agree that I got along more with other Asians or other international students. I think international passport helped a lot with kind of easing into that. I did try to make an effort to get to know people on my floor in Boer Benning, and there was a little bit of a culture dissonance there, just because they were born and raised in West Michigan. Their parents went to Calvin. Like, it was just not things that I could really relate to, and there weren't many things that they could relate to me. But there were a few people that I got along with, and in general, I think just all the extracurricular activities there really left a good lasting impression, like Rangila, and I helped with Entrada, just for other Mahana students who want to visit Calvin. And it left a very good impression in terms of, like, even though you may not get along with everybody, there is like people you probably will get along while you're at Calvin. Challenge wise, I think weather and being an international student and not having access to a car to go grocery shopping, especially when you go to KE, was a little bit of a difficulty, but it makes you appreciate things in life way more after that. Um, but yeah, it definitely, a lot of the friendships I've made in Calvin, I agree with everyone here. It's like, those are relationships that are not really easy to find after college. Did everyone go? Malika? Okay, sorry.
Good. Yeah, so my experience at Calvin, yeah, pretty similar to what everybody has said. My first 2 years, I would say, were smooth in terms of like academics. I came from a pretty academically rigorous high school. So actually Calvin was a slight bit easier. The first year was because I was used to that level of academic challenge. But I never stayed in the dorms. So I commuted from a host family's house to Calvin in the morning for classes and then stayed. And I had like a meal plan that allowed me to eat 3 meals per week in the dining hall. So building community, I think, was harder and more effortful simply because I wasn't on campus all the time. I didn't have a dorm room. I didn't have dorm mates or dinners with dorm friends or activities, events. So I did a lot of leadership things that helped me find people that ended up being like lifelong friends. That was really beneficial, I think. The down part, I think, from my Calvin experience was as I like my third, my fourth year, and then especially my grad year, I think I expected a lot out of Calvin. Like I got to a point where I was like, I'm pouring in my sweat, blood, and everything, and like, I pay so much money to go here and all of these things, and then you become a little bit disenfranchised by some of the things that are going on, and you feel disappointed, just like you would be disappointed with anything in life or any institution in life. So it wasn't specific to like Calvin being at fault. It was just I felt it more personally because I had such a strong bond with the community and the place. So, and I think a lot of it also had to do with my program. Speech therapy is very, very female based. I mean, the statistics are like 97% of speech therapists in the United States are women, and 93% of them are white. So it was, 1 year around surrounded by just women, and then you're also surrounded by white women who have a standard, and I was one of the only people of color in my class. So it was a lot of trying to assimilate to that as well, but trying to stand on my own feet too, because I liked who I was. I was an international student. I'm proud of that. So yeah, I would say joys, but then also some ups and downs altogether. Ellie?
Yeah, I think like everyone shared, I definitely resonate with the kind of nature of a 4-year experience, or if you went to grad school too, but just the ups and downs of being anywhere for a decent amount of time. So I definitely had my highlights, and then just I guess areas in which were a bit tougher. But I would say the thing that stuck out to me in terms of the challenge was just it's kind of similar to what Jeremy and Laura was sharing, but just kind of understanding my identities, I guess, in being comfortable and confident in them, and even being comfortable in that gray area too. So like, I'm from Canada, but my parents are both first generation immigrants, and then I grew up in Asia. So coming into Calvin, I felt very comfortable with certain aspects of North American culture, but at the same time, like very ingrained in me are like, strong, I guess, Asian values and what's important to me and my parents. And so kind of understanding how I could navigate both of those, but then also understanding like that there's a blend of those things. And I know a few people on the screen are kind of in interracial, relationships or marriages, and I'm engaged to an American woman from Grand Rapids, and it's, yeah, just like kind of seeing all of those connections, but also those tension points. I think that would describe what was most difficult, just understanding those differences, and then also, yeah, being comfortable in the gray areas and maybe things that are not as clear. But yeah, I don't know, just experiencing those things, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys, for really sharing and being transparent about your experiences at Calvin. So we got a couple more people here, so I'm going to ask a couple questions to the audience. Who here is a freshman? Any freshmen? Okay, so a 3. Any sophomores? So a couple sophomores, nice. Juniors? Nice, 3 or 4. Seniors? Awesome, so we got more seniors, which is great. So the next couple of questions, we're gonna kind of focus on life after college. So some questions have been coming in, and they're really similar to the questions I was gonna ask you. So I'm gonna go with the ones that people have sent in. And again, if you guys want to ask a question, you can go ahead and text that number on the screen, and I'll be able to see it on this computer over here. So the next question, you guys talked a lot about your community at Calvin and how you really loved how your community kind of really built you up. So let's kind of talk about community post Calvin. How are you intentional about your community post Calvin? Anybody want to go first?
Does
Laura?
it need to be related to Calvin? All right, sorry.
No, it doesn't have to be related to Calvin.
It's not connected to Calvin, it's just community in general.
Yeah,
Okay.
post.
Gotcha.
So maybe like in your first year after you graduated? How are you intentional about creating your community after that?
Yeah, I can go. I moved to Ann Arbor after graduating because that's where I got my job. And I was a controls engineer. And I did not know a single other person in Ann Arbor. And so I had grown up in Grand Rapids and through college continued to go to the same church that I grew up in. This was the first time for myself where I had to find new community truly. And so that was definitely something I had to be very intentional about. So for myself, moving out to Ann Arbor, one of the first things, I moved a few weeks before I started my job, and I lived in an apartment by myself and just started Googling churches. I think one of the benefits of church community specifically, and like a faith-based community, is that there's kind of a starting point for a general set of maybe morals that you immediately have that kind of connection with. And so when I was like, where do I meet friends after college where I'm not like gonna run into people in the dining hall or whatever, especially when my workplace is mostly middle-aged white men. So I started with finding a church and visiting a few churches in the area and getting connected with their small groups. And I also enjoyed dancing a lot in college. And so in Ann Arbor, I started looking for dance studios that I could take classes at and finding, again, kind of going to places where I knew there might be people who have similar interests that I do, that I have. So that's kind of, how I was intentional about it. And then really it was a lot of time and effort. And I think one of the things I learned from it was recognizing that you have to be patient with building relationships post college. You're not going to be living with these, like, next door to these people and being able to, study or see them every day, or grab meals with them, and even being super intentional about relationships. It takes a lot longer, and it feels a lot slower than it did in college. So it was definitely harder, and there were times where you do feel pretty lonely, but being patient with it and recognizing that it'll take time. If you think about like the amount of hours you spend with some of your best friends every day, every week, right now, and thinking about, okay, if I'm pouring into like 2 hours or 2 to 3 hours every week, and that's me being intentional with this person, it's still going to take months before, or like years, before we reach the amount of hours I spend with my friends every month in college. Yeah.
Not everyone has to answer this question, so if you do want to go for it.
I can go next.
Yeah.
So the first year after Calvin, I actually worked at Calvin for a year, which was great because it's in your comfort zone and you're already used to everything there. But afterwards, I moved here to St. Louis, which I knew no one. I didn't have any jobs. So that was very difficult. And like Laura, I tried to find community in churches in the beginning. But like she said, it takes a lot of time. It's not like you're meeting these people every day, or they're not in the same phase of life as you. They may have children, or they may be college students. And now I'm in this weird vacuum that is post-grad but jobless, when everyone is talking about jobs or talking about things that are occupying their lives. So for me, I think it was a little bit unorthodox because I found a lot of friends online through social media, which is not really my personality. Like I'm not heavily, I don't really use, I didn't use it heavily in college, but it allowed me to meet people, very like-minded people. Did a lot of Zoom calls. And that was kind of my intentional effort to like talk to people that I could relate to and had similar interests. But I also found a few people here. But yeah, so that was kind of my intentional effort. It's actually been difficult to keep in contact with friends that I met in Calvin because they're all in different time zones and different life stages as well. So that was, yeah.
I can speak to this a little bit. So after I graduated Calvin, I moved almost immediately to Austin, Texas, where I also did not know anyone. Well, so long story short, I had an internship at the company I currently work at the summer before I graduated. And so I returned full time, and I knew my team, but like the people I was working with, but that was about it. And it's not like I could really do much with the people I work with because they're also like middle-aged white men, software engineers, tech bros, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the first thing I did before I moved here was look for a roommate because I was like, I'm not paying $1,000 for rent every month. I cannot afford that. So I looked for someone who seemed like, similar to me, have similar interests, similar age-ish. And we got along pretty well. She was kind of like, my roommate was kind of like my best friend when I first moved here because we did like everything together. Unfortunately, I don't live with her right now because she moved out of state after our lease was up. But she really helped me, be more or be less intimidated about meeting new people because it's always nice having someone there with you when you're like, meeting like a new group of people. So I was also very intentional with how I found people with like similar backgrounds and interests. Like I joined a girls new to Austin Facebook group. And that's how I met a lot of the people I know here. A lot of young women who also just graduated college and had also just moved to Austin and didn't know anyone. And yeah, that's how I kind of have my friend group right now. We kind of built like, we met each other's mutual friends and then, just like grew our friend groups from there. And Austin is kind of like, I like to describe it as like a big college campus because it's a big city, but a lot of people know, like people as well. So like you'll meet someone on the street or you'll like, scroll through Facebook or something and you'll see, oh, this person has like 2 mutual friends with me. So yeah, it's also, it kind of has that like college campus vibe almost, also because it's like a younger city, I guess. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram were my friends when it came to looking for people to hang out with. Yeah.
Nice. Maybe could we have one more person who stayed in Grand Rapids? Because I know a couple of the seniors are staying in Grand Rapids. One of you guys talk. Okay, Kuya, go for it.
Yeah, I would say similarly. Well, like, cause like your whole life you're in school, you're being told to do this and that, and you're with a bunch of other people, you make a lot of friends, and then once you graduate college, no one's telling you to do anything anymore, and you don't see all your friends right away. So for me, it was really lonely the first few months. So it's definitely going to be a transition. So that's just something to be prepared for and to think about as you'll be graduating. And I think it's important, yeah, especially if you're in Grand Rapids, it's important to find community church, start learning to take initiative because no one's telling you what to do anymore. You don't have assignments or homework or anything. So, and if you're not happy in Grand Rapids, or if you're not finding that community, and I think it's important to take that leap of faith and like find a different city or find a different workplace, or so that you can be in a community that's, because I think it's really important to be in a community where you feel thriving. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
Nice, thanks. So before we go on to like the next big question, we had a couple follow-up questions. So the first one for Megan, where did you find a roommate?
I honestly just went on Facebook, went to Find Roommates Austin, joined that group, and was like, hey, I'm gonna be moving to Austin in like a couple of months. This is my budget. These are my interests. This is kind of where I want to live. And then I made that post, and I would like keep an eye on that page too to see if like to see if there were any other people also posting who I kind of like, I guess, vibed with. But yeah, and then I just like reached out to people, or people reached out to me, and we would just kind of like message back and forth to see if we were a good fit. And thankfully, I got super lucky with my first roommate. I know it's kind of scary, like trying to look for a stranger to live with in a new city, but she was very nice. She was Vietnamese American, so also Asian. And she had 2 Maltese dogs, which was also very nice to have. But yeah, I got super lucky with that. But yeah, Facebook, online groups are your friends.
Nice, thank you. Okay, and then the next one for Laura, kind of going back to your time in college. So I'll just read off the question. So Laura, you mentioned difficulties with the different sides of your identity. What was something that helped you feel more comfortable or secure in your identity as you interacted with the people around you?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think part of it was recognizing that, like, putting less importance on how others viewed me really helped me with being more comfortable of like, yeah, maybe I don't fit in. I don't know all of the, like, I literally was that person who like walked in and was like, why are there so many shoes on the ground, like right at the door? And I had to learn to like, oh yeah, like a lot of like Asian, like Americans, and like you take your shoes off right when you enter. But yeah, just being more comfortable, like, yeah, like I'm learning, and I'm maybe not, I don't know all of the little things here and there, and maybe I don't fit in exactly how I think I'm supposed to fit in to either of these groups, but that's okay because I'm unique, and that's who I am and who God created me. And being more comfortable with that and recognizing ultimately my identity is not in like what race I am, what culture I grew up in, but my identity is in Christ, and he created me to be who I am. And I think honestly, again, like being super transparent with my friends of like, this is like when I have both friend groups, like saying like, oh, here's like our plans for the weekend, and feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to choose between 2 friends, and like I'm gonna let down one of them. Just being transparent with my friends about that, and being like, yeah, like this group of friends is doing this that night, and so I'm gonna go hang out with them, but like I'd love to hang out with you guys, you know, Saturday instead. So that'd be my advice.
Nice. I actually remember something that I admired from Laura was she lived with her 2 friend groups. Like one year she lived with one friend group, and the other year she lived with the other friend group. And I just always thought that was really a nice way to balance out kind of the 2 friend groups there. Okay, so going back to kind of life after college, or yeah, how do you guys deal with work-life balance? Maybe Ellie or Malika, would you guys want to go first for this one? Okay, Malika, nice.
So I work in a field where in speech therapy, you can either work in the schools, you can work outpatient in a clinic, or you can work in a hospital. And when you're in school, you go through all three of the internships. And I picked the hospital because I wanted that work-life balance of like, I clock in for 8 hours and I clock out after 8, and that's it. I'm not going to take stuff home. And I'm not going to have to worry about what happens tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm going to see another set of 8 patients. And while that's great and all, I think I was very naive in thinking that, because when you work in the hospital, yeah, you may only work a set number of hours, but you take home quite a bit of like emotional stress, at least in my field. So just remembering that early on, having spaces where I was able to talk about my work, having spaces where I actually just limited time. So I would come home, and we were married, and I would come home, and there were times early on where I'd just like talk about my work for the entire evening and how stressful it was, or like somebody died, or like I messed up somebody's diet order in a chart or did something and felt very guilty about it, or some patient's family was not very kind or something, and it would just go on and on and on and on. And very quickly, my husband, who's very, very kind, was like, hey, I think we need to like cut it out, or like we need to really lower the time of how much we talk about this. And that was really helpful for somebody like me who needs to be told that I need that feedback. So I think after about 6 months of doing that job, I finally came to a point of, I work my 8 hours, I come home, I talk about it for half an hour, and then I'm done. And then also finding a good, like full disclosure, like finding a really good therapist. Like for me, finding a counselor and a therapist who helped me process like some of the worst things that I see in the hospital and some of the best things that I see, and how to manage that well and not just ignore it or become numb to it, was really, really helpful. Not being afraid to say like, hey, I need somebody to help me process this, because I can ignore it for a very long time, but it'll come up somewhere where I don't want it to come up. Was helpful.
Yeah, I guess you want me to share too, Pila? Yeah, so like Malika, like I work a normal work schedule, I guess. So from like 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. But I think kind of maybe along the same vein of what Malika was saying, I work for a nonprofit, so there's an emotional investment that you have to make, I think, or maybe not have to, but that you naturally do because you care about your work. And so there's maybe some of that baggage that naturally attaches to you. But I would also add to that there's also like your body that will like, or maybe your spirit that will like speak up and say like, okay, like enough's enough. And it's helpful to have people in your life that speak into that. But then, there's also situations where it creeps up on you. But I would say for me, it's interesting because, work from home has also changed a lot of the landscape of, professional work, let's say. So I go in the office twice a week and then 3 days from home. And so I want to say that like with my 3-4 years out of college now working, it's been the easiest ever, just because I can spend 10 minutes and loan the laundry machine and do the house stuff that normally would be waiting for me at home after a long day at work. And so I'd say there's a lot of grace that goes into that as well. That probably helps with the balance and just kind of sorting through the day-to-day responsibilities that you would have as an adult. Yeah, so I mean, I don't have a very good secret or way to go about it. I got a notebook and I make myself lists. That's how I manage myself. But other than that, that's basically it for me.
Nice. So we've got about 5 minutes left in our time together. So maybe if you could leave our students with one piece of advice, whether that be for their college years or their life after college, or even just, we talked a little bit about our identities, like how to deal with that, even in the workplace or at school. What are some words of advice that you could impart to our students here? You guys can think about it for a second. And then whoever is ready.
I can go.
Okay.
My advice would be to, in regards to like, kind of going back to work-life balance, like the people that you work with, you will spend a large majority of your week with. And so as you're looking for jobs, really that being a big part of your decision, or at least like a serious factor to consider, is like your manager sets a lot of the tone for the work-life balance and team dynamic and the people that you're working with. So I think that is an important piece to deciding if the job is the right fit for you. And secondly, I guess this is all career focused, so I'm sorry, but I also would say that like your job that you take post college is very, very likely not going to be the job you have for in 5 years, in definitely like 10, 20 years. I think when I was first looking at jobs, my stress was so high with it because I was like, I need to pick the job that I'm going to like retire from. And that's not the case. I'm on my third job currently, and like third company currently. And yeah, the first job that I took, I was there for 7 months. And I think a lot of my friends have had at least one move in terms of career since graduating already, if not more. Not to say that's not great. Like if you stay at the same company that you interned with or got right out of college, that's obviously awesome. But I would say don't be afraid to make that switch, kind of going back to what Jeremy was saying with moving to a different city. Like don't be afraid to take some chances and change things up if where you're at isn't the right fit for you. And especially when it comes to job, there will be jobs out there, and I think, and once you get into a new role, you're like, oh wow, the work-life balance is possible. I just didn't, like, I was so fearful of that before I switched jobs. Or, fill in the blank with what your worry is. But yeah, I just encourage you all to be open to the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities out there. So.
Yeah, I would echo what Laura was saying. I've been at Blizzard for almost 3 years now, and the only reason I've really stayed here for so long is because the team I work with has been really great. Like I love all of my coworkers. I was lucky enough to have a really good boss when I was first starting out. Like, it's scary as a woman going into like STEM because like I was surrounded by men like every day, and they're all like way older than me. They have way more experience under their belt, and it felt super intimidating because I was like a fresh grad and stupid, I guess. So, but going into my team was always very encouraging, and they always like encouraged questions and encouraged you to ask questions, and they basically just wanted to see you grow. So definitely for your first job, like your workplace is so important. Like you don't want to spend 8 hours working in an environment that's going to make you like stressed out or anxious all the time. So yeah. And another piece of advice I would also give is to start being comfortable with being by yourself. That's something I had to learn when COVID hit and everything like shut down, and I couldn't like hang out with my friends as much, or I was forced to like stay in all the time because like nothing was open, you couldn't do anything couldn't go anywhere. And yeah, when I first graduated college, I had a lot of FOMO. Like I was always like, oh my gosh, what are my friends doing? Like I don't want to miss out on anything, you know. But being in like COVID and under quarantine taught me that like you don't have to always be doing something all the time. Like you don't always have to be hanging out with people. And it just taught me to be more comfortable with myself. Like right now, I'm also very introverted by nature, so it's probably a bit easier for me. But yeah, right now I can just spend like hours by myself, like just chilling with my cat or, you know, doing something outside, doing like gardening. Yeah, I got super into gardening also when COVID hit. But yeah, I think happiness or self-fulfillment comes from knowing yourself well and being comfortable with yourself. And one thing that helped me a lot with that too was getting therapy or seeing a therapist, because you don't have to go to therapy because you have like problems. You can just go because you need like, you know, a space to communicate with someone and to like, you know, just be honest with yourself and to like discover yourself too. So that's something I also recommend.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think the piece of advice that I would give is just kind of like a recognition in yourself. If I could encourage you guys all to recognize that there's definitely a space for you in which you're going to be welcomed wherever you do move. And I think that's apparent with, you know, everyone on the screen and their testimonies of moving to a different spot and eventually finding it. But I would just speak into that because, yeah, like I work in a prison ministry and working with some like, you know, really dark stories and backgrounds and people that you wouldn't, just frankly wouldn't want to be in a relationship with. But at the same time, recognizing like the transformative work of God and his grace in those people's lives and connecting to that and how that reflects back on to my own life. And I think ultimately that's like the recognition of being made in that image of God, no matter how far you may have fallen or, you know, what your interests are. And I think that likeness and being made in the image of God can be shared, and there's community in that. And so that's what I would encourage you guys all to maybe walk away with is post-college. There'll be some scary situations, I'm sure, and change. But being made in the image of God and finding other people that are also made in that way, there's relationship there and community and safety. So yeah.
All right, I'll go. My advice would be to just like building off what everyone's been saying is to, you don't have to be set right after you graduate. So don't be afraid that you don't have to have everything figured out basically. But I would say to take risks and try different things if you know what the job you're working or what you're doing isn't the right fit. Don't be afraid to take risks, especially right after graduating. Try different places, different work spots until you can find something that's fulfilling. And yeah, it's important to know what you're passionate about. So if you're working a job, make sure to spend time after work, you know, doing other hobbies or things you love doing, because that's really important. And yeah, I'm gonna be cheesy and say a Bible verse, Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So be courageous.
I can go next. Yeah, like everyone was saying, I don't think it's actually that common for everyone to find the job that they find fulfilling right out of college. My takeaway personally, I wanted to say, just had a brain fart. With coming out of college, I feel like you have a lot of pressure to feel like your identity needs to be set in job security or family relationships and all that. And while that may help some people to push onwards, other people you may feel like you're caving in. So instead of letting everyone else's perception kind of dictate how you live life, someone said this before, like understand yourself first and what you were passionate about, what you find fulfilling. And that might be scary for some people if you come out of college and then you start asking, is this actually what I want to do? But I don't think you're alone in that, and it's never too late to change your job career. Your parents might say otherwise, but you dictate your own life. So as go into adulthood, yeah, like take those risks while you can to figure out what fits you the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two things that I would leave, one is, as people have mentioned before, I would say, like, as far as my experience, the biggest thing that's been profound for me is that God is faithful. I graduated and every single person in my class had a job, and I was just so mentally tired. I said I wasn't even gonna apply for a job, and I was like, Lord help me, I'm broke, whatever. Like it's just gonna have to wait. And I will tell you, God was faithful. Somebody asked me if I wanted to work somewhere, which is unheard of, but it was what I needed at the time. Even in the pandemic, when people were being laid off, pretty much all my coworkers were laid off for 7 weeks, but I still had employment. So just trusting that no matter what happens, what gets thrown at you, God is faithful. He wouldn't put you where you are right now if he didn't plan to carry you through. You're never where you are if it wasn't for his plan. So just trust that there is something there. Be brave with it, and just ride the wave, I would say. And in terms of a career, I would say don't be afraid to be selfish. And I use that word in its best sense. To say, don't be afraid to ask more for yourself. Don't be afraid to push harder and, look around and expect more from the people around you, just like you would expect from yourself. So, walk the talk, but definitely don't just settle, I would say. It's very easy to settle, especially when you're starting out early thinking, I'm young, I don't have the experience, I don't have this, I don't have that. Yeah, you don't, but also you are where you are because of a lot of things, and you are made in the image of God. You are smart. You have a Calvin education. Like, there are a lot of things that are going for you, and yeah, just don't do yourself a disservice by settling, I'd say.
Wow, such great words of advice. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you guys so much. One last question. Can we see your dogs? Or pets? Oh my gosh. Laura's dog now doesn't want to come. Oh my gosh. Everyone's, oh wow. Oh my gosh, the cat. Yay. All right. And then maybe if you guys could put in the chat your emails or something if you are willing to have these students contact you if they have further questions, etc. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. Can we give them another round of applause? Yeah. So much words of wisdom that we've had. All right. So I'll let you guys put in your email. So if you guys want to grab a picture afterwards. But yeah, thank you guys also, audience, for coming. I hope you had a good time. Yeah, thank you for asking questions. You guys asked a lot of good questions. I wasn't able to get to everyone, so I'm sorry about that. But I hope you. What was your question, Christian?
Do we want to know?
Sorry, it only tells me your number, not your name. All right, well, if you guys want to come up to the camera and say bye, you guys can. If you don't feel awkward. Here comes Tony.
Thank you.
All right.